Good afternoon and welcome to Bridgewater State. I am Paul Jean, the Vice President for Marketing and Communications, and I have the honor of being the Master of Ceremony for this event. And I was a student of Dr. Clifford's a slight number of years ago. 83 graduate of Bridgewater. And it really is entirely fitting, I think, that we rename Summer Street House as the Dr. Guy C. Clifford House, because no one was more instrumental both in the founding of the political science department and the establishment and growth of that program here on campus than Dr. Clifford. I'm going to probably go back and forth between Guy and Dr. Clifford because I could never really get accustomed to calling him Guy. So, but I do want to recognize, before we get moving, some special guests in the audience. First and foremost, welcome to the Clifford family. Thank you for being here. And we're going to hear from two of Guy's sons, Bob and Bill, a little bit later on. But I just want to say, Gail, thank you so much. I want to thank the entire family for everything they have done for this university. Guy was deeply dedicated to his students, and your support of this institution, of the political science department, of this program, is deeply meaningful and really reflective of Guy's dedication. Clifford's family has helped innumerable students through paid internships and scholarship, and thank you for all of that support. Guy would have been proud. I just want to recognize, there are so many people here to recognize, so I just want to recognize a few. Chairman of the Board of Trustees, Jean Durgan, is here. Chairman of the Bridgewater State University Foundation, Tom Caron. President Fred Clark, also a student of Guy's. Members of the political science department, faculty, past and present. This is like old home week, it really is. This is wonderful. And many members of the president's cabinet here are in attendance, and others as well. Before I turn things over to our principal speakers, I just want to say a few words. As I said, I was a political science graduate, class of 1983. I was first really introduced to Guy Clifford on a political science club trip to Washington, D.C. One memory of that was, and if people know him, the inimitable Gil Bliss, a student at that time. And Gil had a larger-than-life personality. And because he was a bit of an older student, he was the one who could drive the van down to Washington. And my recollection was just, I can still see it, Gil driving with the music cranked up and his head going like this. And Guy was just sitting there because nothing would ruffle Guy. He was just sitting there, taking this all in. He then led, I think, a dozen or 15 of us all around Washington to meetings with members of Congress, late Senator Kennedy, Department of State, different federal agencies, down to Mount Vernon for an entire week. And that was when I first got to know Guy Clifford. And after that trip, I remember I declared myself a political science major, in part because I liked the music and I thought, this was great. This is cool. But Guy was a great teacher. He was a fine teacher. I recall that he instilled in me a love for political philosophy and the great thinkers who he introduced us to, from Machiavelli to Montesquieu and Rousseau and Locke and many others. But most importantly, I think he was a deeply caring mentor. He cared so much about his students. In that sense, he was the epitome of the Bridgewater State faculty. And I recall when thinking about graduate school and going through that whole process, Guy spending all kinds of time with me, just advising me on programs that met my interest, reviewing graduate school essays and applications. And Guy's imprint was really seen across that entire department, which for the students who were there, I think it felt like just an extended family between Guy and Mike and Paulie and Bob Larson and others who were there. For their students, it felt like an extended family. And Guy, I think, was the person who instilled that in that entire department. So I want to introduce a member of that extended family first. I want to introduce Mike Krasanik, who was, I believe, hired by Guy in the early days of the department and was a colleague of Guy's for many, many years. Mike?
Well, thank you all for coming. It's a glorious day here today at Bridgewater State University. The year is 1967. I just talked to Jim Scroggs before we came here, and Jim Scroggs and Guy came together. They were tennis doubles partners for a number of years. So Guy, of course, was here at the beginning of the political science department when it was political science and history. So indeed a founding father of political science. Guy left an engineering career in order to become a political science instructor, pursue a PhD, and we're forever grateful for him making that decision. As Paul mentioned, Guy taught Western political thought. He taught state and local government. He taught American government, a number of other courses as well. Back in those days, you taught a lot in order to meet the needs of the students of Bridgewater State College at that time. In fact, he actually taught my wife Carol, who's there, Western political thought, and she remembers fondly his discussion of some of the sinister aspects of Niccolò Machiavelli and the Prince. She once told me that her memory of Guy is the end justifies the means. Now, I don't know whether this is what Guy wanted Carol or others to remember about Machiavelli or about political thought, but he obviously had a major impact on her thinking, and I don't know whether she still lives by that credo of the end justifies the means or not. By the 70s and the 80s, the political science department grew to 4 people. Bob Larson, the late Walter Adamson, who just passed away recently, a Guy, and of course myself. But it was affectionately called the Big Four, but it really wasn't the Big Four. It was like 3 guys over 6 foot and me at like 5'7", 5'8". Eventually Polly Harrington came and others, and now of course the department is much larger with a master's in public administration and some very distinguished faculty members. And I can't miss an opportunity to recognize Dr. Shaheen Mosafar, who got the Lifetime Achievement Award. Both Jordan Barkalow and Kevin Donnelly, who in the last 2 years received the Distinguished Teaching Award here on campus. Fred stole Denise Leuenberger as his chief of staff. He stole Wendy Haynes as the interim dean of the graduate school. Well, I'm retired, kind of retired. But as Paul mentioned, Guy had a major impact on the programs and the direction of our students here at Bridgewater State College. He mentioned the internship program, which I think is probably his lasting major contribution. Right now we have a very, very vibrant internship program, and back in those days, it set the model for internship programs across the university and in the state. And Guy had an enormous impact on that. And of course, mentoring the students, supervising them as they participated in the internship program. He certainly was a very, very active in student government in terms of advising students. He was involved in curriculum reform in the department, and he was also involved in a number of faculty committees and faculty affairs. Guy was always what I call cool, calm, and collected. I say that because when I dealt with him, I was never cool, calm, and collected. So Guy provided that kind of calming influence here at the political science department. But he was always a gentleman, always a person of high principle, always interested in what we call now and what Fred has called student success here at Bridgewater State University. Now, for days, I've tried to find this famous picture in which during the down days here at Bridgewater State, where the faculty didn't get a pay raise for about 3.5 years, there's a picture of Guy and I in the bitter cold. There was a famous slogan back in those days, "Make it in Massachusetts." Of course, we weren't making it in Massachusetts when you're not getting paid for 3.5 years. But there's Guy at 6'2", 6'3", and Mike Krasanik at 5'8", walking around with these hats and signs saying we're not making it in Massachusetts. The reason I say that is that many other faculty members refused to participate in that kind of demonstration because they didn't want to have their name associated with challenging the status quo. But Guy, a person of high principle, was on the right side of this issue. Eventually, I think we got a 1 or 2% raise, but that's neither here nor there. But I don't have that picture. I wish I had that picture of making it in Massachusetts, but we really weren't making it in Massachusetts. As Paul has said, the most important aspect of Guy was he was for the students, spent a great deal of time with them, gave them encouragement, gave them direction, helped them as a true mentor in terms of developing their career objectives and achieving their dreams. And one can never forget that kind of contribution of an individual to a department and to majors in that department. Then there was Guy Clifford, the Bridgewater legend. There's not a student here who remember going at 1 o'clock in the morning to a coffee shop somewhere in West Bridgewater or Bridgewater and seeing Guy Clifford there at 12 or 1 with a black cup of coffee, a cigarette, a red pencil, and a stack of blue books. No one really understood why the hell he was there, to be quite honest with you. In fact, the students would come in and say, "My God, Professor Clifford is here. It's 1 o'clock in the morning," you know. And maybe Gail can shed some light, or Bill or Bob can shed some light on that. But it's always been a kind of a rural Bridgewater legend about Guy Clifford being that kind of late night corrector, so to speak, in those coffee shops in town. But that also points up the fact that he was clearly a dedicated and conscientious member of the faculty who wanted to make sure that he gave it his best effort with regard to those blue books and class time. I want to end by saying that Guy was always conscientious in his work, interested in, as I say, student success. He was this cool, calm, and collected individual. And I mean that in a very, very positive way. He brought this kind of calmness to departmental debates, discussions of issues in the classroom. And that means a lot to students, to have that kind of calming, deliberative influence on their lives in the classroom. And I think that that's one of his lasting personal legacies. Gail and the 3 boys, as Guy would say, 4 boys, excuse me. Who's the one that I forgot, Gail? No? And the 4 sons, sometimes he would call them the boys. Guy, you should be very proud of what he has done and his gift to Bridgewater State University, now Bridgewater State College during his days, now Bridgewater State University. If I may use a political science term, and Paul has said it already, Guy was the founding father of political science here, and it's appropriate that this sign be there because when students come here and walk up those stairs, there's a great legacy that they enter here in terms of the political science major and the political science history. And so we want to congratulate the members of the Clifford family and recognize Guy for all time with this naming of the Clifford House. So thank you.
I'd now like to invite up Dr. Brian Frederick, who's in a long line of succession of political science department chairs stemming from Guy. I don't know if that's like St. Peter all the way to you're the 8th or 9th Pope or something. So, Brian.
Thank you, Paul, and I want to thank everybody for being here today. It's a great day to honor the legacy of a great man. Of all the speakers you're going to hear today, I'm the only one who never met Guy Clifford. Sadly, he passed away during my first semester here at Bridgewater State. Still remember the day my colleagues George Serra and Winnie Haynes informed me of his death. The grief and sadness on their faces is etched in my memory forever. However, it would take me a while to fully realize what he meant to his family, this institution, and this department. I've gained a true appreciation of Dr. Clifford's life through the efforts of his family to keep his memory alive at our annual MPA Public Service Recognition Dinners. You couldn't help but be deeply moved by his wife Gail's effort to commemorate his career and vision through awarding the Guy Clifford Scholarship every year at the dinner. Gail's love for Guy was a sight to behold. Made a deep impression on me and everyone who attended those events. We should all be as lucky to have someone care about us as much after our deaths as the Clifford family cares about preserving the legacy of Guy. Despite what you might hear or read in the news, public service is not the most lucrative of professions. Our students and alumni don't have a lot of money, so every penny that's been donated and raised for the Guy Clifford Scholarship means so much to them. Because of the extraordinary generosity displayed by the Clifford family, our students have been able to pursue their dreams and make the communities they live in a better place. It's fitting that we are dedicating this house to the memory of Guy Clifford because he was the foundation upon which the political science department was built. Every house needs a strong foundation, just as every academic department does. Today, we publicly acknowledge his legacy as a founding member of the Political Science Department by renaming the Summer Street House the Dr. Guy C. Clifford House. Guy Clifford is a symbol of the enormously talented faculty that have served in the Political Science Department since its inception. BSU is fortunate to employ some of the most gifted and dedicated professors in this country. However, I can honestly say that no department has contributed more to the growth and development of this institution over the past generation than has political science. You don't have to walk too far to see some of the buildings on campus that would not have been constructed without the efforts of its faculty. It's not hyperbole to say that this institution would have failed to reach the heights that it has today without the leadership of this department. Every public institution of higher education needs a strong and vibrant political science department, and today's event is a recognition of that fact. For almost 2 decades, this house has allowed the political science department to prosper and flourish by building on the foundation that Dr. Clifford established. It has enabled us to come together as more than just colleagues, but as professional family. Indeed, I consider the men and women that I've served with in this department to be my professional brothers and sisters. So, in honoring the legacy of Dr. Guy Clifford, we also pay tribute to the outstanding faculty of the Political Science Department at BSU. The ones that I've had the pleasure to serve with during my time here: Mike Krasanik, Shaheen Mozafar, George Serra, Wendy Haynes, Mark Kemper, Jordan Barkalow, Dinez Leuenberger, Jody Koretsky, Kevin Donnelly, Erica France, Sandra Papaiden, Melinda Tarsi, and those who I didn't get the opportunity to serve with: Robert Larson, Walter Adamson, David Sudhalter, Pauline Harrington, Chris Kirky, Victor DeSantis, Erna Gellis, Brendan Burke, George Candler, David Hill, Tracy Osborne, and so many others. We've all worked tirelessly to make sure that we develop the next generation of public service leadership in Southeast Massachusetts and beyond. Going forward, every day we walk into the Guy Clifford House, the faculty of this department will continue to support his mission of mentoring political science and public administration students so they get the first-class education they deserve. In honoring Dr. Clifford, we are also saluting the accomplishments of our students, past, present, and future. I cannot wait to see what they achieve next. In closing, I want to say a word about the individual who made this event possible, President Fred Clark. Last May, when I came to his office and proposed this idea, I never thought it would come to fruition. I thought it was somewhat of a pipe dream. But through Fred's dogged determination and the generous support of the Clifford family, along with the endorsement of the Board of Trustees, it has now become a reality. For those efforts, I will be eternally grateful, as will countless faculty and students who will walk through the doors of the Guy Clifford House. So all I can say is thank you, Mr. President. I know your former professor, Guy Clifford, is looking down with a big smile on his face, saying, "Great job, Fred, great job." Thank you.
Now it gives me great pleasure to introduce Guy's son, Bob, who has come all the way from Marina del Rey in California, where he serves as a founding partner of Liquid Venture Partners, an investment bank. Bob has been extraordinarily generous benefactor of BSU. Bob, if you would come up and say a few words about your dad.
I thought about putting down some notes, but I really decided, and I did a few, but I decided to sort of wing this because it's about my dad. First, thank you, Paul. Thank you, Brian. Thank you, Mike. I'm up here to thank people and then hand it over to my brother Bill, who is a much more polished public speaker than I am. Mike, to your point, I have no idea. I can't lend any insight into the early hours of the morning when I was sound asleep. Perhaps Bill can, but it was a total mystery to me, and I was with him for a long time. There are definitely a few people to thank here, and it starts with Fred. You know, I went to a university in Los Angeles. The president is a prodigious fundraiser. To be a president of a university today, raising funds is an important element of that job. And I will tell you, when Fred contacted me he was in town, I loved the fact that Bridgewater State was, raising money in San Francisco. They were hosting things in Beverly Hills. I'm like, this place is all grown up. It's like BSC to BSU, and Fred, you're the perfect person to lead the growth going forward. His level of, there's an art to the ask, there really is, and his level of grace and thoughtfulness and friendship and sincerity. It was going to be easy anyways for me. But when someone you haven't met before comes into your office and displays the level of friendship that Fred did, I'll never forget it. And all the members of his team. I've gotten to know Brenda and Christine and Todd. Brian, you did a lovely job of keeping us informed as well in terms of the progress. A particularly strong shout out to Betsy Dubuque, though. Where is she? Is she still here? That is my pal, okay? When my mom shared the scholarship with us, we were all moved and thrilled, and we were all contributing. And then I was just like, Betsy, let's endow this thing. Let's get this thing put away. And she's just been the most incredible partner, in getting that done. And it's just been a wonderful ride with you. So thank you. So now I want to just introduce my entire family that's here today. The brothers, Bill, John, Jamie, the grandkids that adore my dad, and he adored them. Amy, would you guys all stand up, please, so everyone knows who you are, all of you. Teresa. Everybody. Yeah. That's our family right there. After the conversation with Fred, it was a conversation with my brothers, and that was super easy too. I'm like, this is what they came to us with, and we were astonished. And when I saw it for the first time, I had seen a photo of it. When I saw it for the first time, Sunday night, I was just it was a very simple thought. My dad would like this. My dad he was not a flashy man. He was not a guy that sought the spotlight. If anything, he went in the other direction. But this is so appropriate and lovely, and he would really like this. So thank you guys for making this happen. And thank all of you for coming. We've got some of our, my folks' dearest friends in the audience. We've got Peter Wyman in the audience. The level of support our family gets from Bridgewater to this day is so moving. So I just love the fact that all of you are here. This is going to be tough. I'm not going to get through this. It's about her.
Okay, Bob, that's all I have
That's
to
it.
say.
Love you, Mom. Love you, Mom. So, in parting, before I hand it over to my polished brother here, Mike, I am so thrilled for you. You know, you are one of my dad's great friends, great colleagues. You're one of the finest professors this university has ever known, and I am so happy that you are being honored with a scholarship fund of your own. I wish I could be here to attend your dinner, but I have already contributed to it, and I will continue to do so because you have meant so much to this university and so much to my dad, so thank you. All right. And with that, Paul, I'm going to do your job, and I'm going to let Bill tell you the magnificent work that he does, and he's going to say a few words about my dad. Bill.
Thank you, Bob. It's a magnificent day. I don't know about my work, but I want to acknowledge Mr. Chairman, President Clark, Professor Krasanik, Professor Frederick, Paul. Thank you for your nice remarks, and Bob. This is a very sweet, it's a sweet moment.
I gave you that billing, man. You know.
Yeah, but you hit the emotion. We're very proud, but what the emotion I feel really is one of gratitude to this institution, to my dad as a father, to this community. And so today's been a very I'm grateful for the opportunity to reflect. And, you know, when I come around these parts, usually people say, wow, how tall are you? And it's shifted, you know, after you get through adolescence, you've hit your height. They don't ask that anymore. They say, damn, are you Guy Clifford? And my mother still parades me around, and it's a ghost of Guy moment, and I feel like dead man walking. So it's particularly nice to have my brothers here, which I call the Blue Suit Brigade, because others do bear passing resemblance to my father, except for Jamie, but we're not going to unveil any skeletons today. He's in the black suit. But I would like to say a few words about the man and his interests and the house. I was poking around on the virtual commons of Bridgewater State University. This is an online archive, and I came across the State College of Bridgewater 1967-1969 catalog, and learned that there were 21 departments at the time, including the Department of History and Political Science, and an instructor named Guy. You hired a serious guy. You hired a good guy, and what comes to mind is his work ethic. I think his consistent citizenship. I started to think, apart from that, he must have been competitive, if not ambitious, although that's not the first C word that comes to mind for me, but he must have been. But by and large, as Bob said, he was a humble professor by nature, curious and willing to do a lot of hard work on behalf of students and the people that he cared about. And I think it was unusual, as Mike said, that at least back then in the early 60s, it was unusual to do these kinds of career changes, where today we take this very much for granted that you can go from academia to government to business and back. So in some ways, I think he was probably a pretty brave guy too. By 1996, I looked up that catalog too, and the political science department was chaired by Professor Krasanik and had 8 members, including my father during his last of 29 or 30 years, and I think 150 some odd students, more majors. They were getting into some international affairs work, which is my field, and that leads me a little bit to some of his interests. Over those 30 years, of course, when I was 6 or 7 when we moved here, I was in my own world. I still kind of am, as my brothers would say, but I remember the ways that he included me in his activities on campus. They included the professors or the profs softball team, and I took a walk behind the Stearns Botanical Garden, and where the Dana Mullafaria Science and Technology Center is, Science and Mathematics, and that area that's now a parking lot, and where the trains run was one of the fields that the profs played in. I think we have David Morwick here, who was a member of that team. They played the administration, they played clubs like the Lions and the Kiwanis, and got slaughtered. I know because I was the scorekeeper learning how to work the book, but it was great to see my father in that context and see how he got along, and as it was with Professor Scroggs, Jim Scroggs, who was a longtime tennis partner, and every now and then I got to be the 4th in the doubles. I could relate one story which happened on the Great Hill courts when I was on my dad's team, and yes, he is a very nice, calm guy, but boy, did he suck that day. And I double faulted rarely, and Jim gave me a wink like, my father criticized me, and Jim gave me a wink to say, you've done the best you can with that crappy partner. But we had a lot of fun in many of those times. It was an unusual moment for him, but I've obviously never forgotten it. And then, of course, I do know a little bit about the 1 a.m. interludes, and he would stay up. I'm being the oldest. He usually stayed up for me. I don't know about my other brothers, but when I came home from my high school fun, and then he would be safe to go to Windy Ridge. But I also know that I had a hand with the red pencil in those blue books. I probably may even have graded Fred and Paul, because my dad, as hardworking as he was, outsourced a job to me for money. And while I did not grade the essays for content, I did for spelling and grammar and all the multiple choices, and I learned a lot. I think it was giving me some responsibility. I think it was giving me an insight into the kind of knowledge that that was his milieu. So that was very fun for me. Now, one of the things I discovered online today that kind of blew me away was, it's amazing the digital dust you leave. And he didn't leave that much because he's gone now, but there was a book review in the Bridgewater Review. I don't know if that publication is still around, but he wrote a book review in September 1989 about Mikhail S. Gorbachev, an intimate biography, which was written by Strobe Talbot and a number of other Time magazine editors. And you know, I never thought of him as writing all that much, because in part he was really dedicated to the students. I've been to a number of schools where the reverse is true. Anyway, it was pretty well written. And for a political scientist, nicely hedged. The first paragraph mentions a timely contribution and appropriate reading for any person interested in a man who may well be the USSR's leader for the remainder of this century, if not longer. So Gorbachev lasted another 2 years to 1991. But lest we forget, nobody, least of all the political scientists, the former journalists, the current journalists, ever predicted Donald Trump. So he's in good company. The House. You know, I want to talk about the House. The House is the perfect scale. Fred, I don't know why you didn't ask this guy for a building. Next time, you got to ask for the building. But the House, I'm glad you didn't, because the rest of us wouldn't be able to fill in. But the House is the great scale, and especially because, Mom, I hope that the international spirit that you brought to his political thought in state and local, I hope that international spirit, I hope the spirit of the way you've raised us in our houses in this town carries open house. He would have been more deliberate, and he would have liked maybe the back room or the summer room, but I hope that my mother's spirit is involved here, as I know it has been throughout his career. You cannot do what he did here without the love and the support. I'm not sure, Mike, that it was all that calm on our side, in our doors, but as Judy Gabriel well knows, Mary Stengel well knows, and other neighbors, but it was founded in love, and it endured, and it created a very welcoming environment for this wonderful group of people. Brendan, who has since moved away but was a neighbor, all of you, from the walks that you took with my dad, you're here, and it's really just, that is why I'm so grateful. That's it. That's not it. Thank you for the applause. That's not it, because I wanted to say something. Now, I didn't realize that Paul also was a classmate of Fred's, an '83 graduate, as am I, of a less illustrious institution. But you guys really embody what you are. Perfect. Fred, it has been amazing to get to know you. As my brother said, I think I may have had more interactions with you, and I was so pleased to be included in your inauguration and to meet you in Washington from time to time. You are going to have, I don't know what that inauguration must have been in your skin, but it's going to be right there again with your first commencement. What a great guy you are. The caring, I know you are a student and alumnus, the president, you love this school. I've seen the passion right to the students you shake hands with. It's right on, brother.
Thank you very much, Bill. I want to say to Gail, to all the grandchildren, it's so good to have you here. I didn't expect to see the grandchildren here, and to Bill and Bob and John and Jamie. Really, this is for you. It's for the university, it's for the political science department, but it's really for you. We're so pleased and honored, truly honored, to name this building after your granddad, your dad, your husband, my teacher, my professor, my mentor as well. It's such a beautiful day and a beautiful honor, truly, for all of us. I'm happy to kind of bookend the conversation with Paul also. Paul and I competed all throughout our time at Bridgewater State. And, you know, I always wondered how he got a little bit ahead of me on those blue books. And Mike Krasanik, people would say, I don't know how Mike Krasanik or Guy Clifford or Pauline Harrington or Rob Larson or Walter Adamson could read your handwriting. Now I know it was probably the Chinese influence that helped you decipher those blue books. But, you know, I want to say it's very emotional, I think, for all of us. You know, I look at Bill and I see Guy Clifford. I listen to Bob and I hear him, and he's always here. You know, you think about your time in college, you think about those moments in your life where you're formed, you know, and I think back to when I was a student here at Bridgewater State, and it really was the crucible for me. All those influences at the time, those giants who were here at Bridgewater State, that made such a difference for me, I know for Paul as well, and for so many that were just like us coming through these halls. And you know, I also want to say that there's something special about the political science department. There was something very special back then, whether it was the interest that Mike Krasanik took in students or Guy Clifford, the phone call I got from Pauline Harrington years later that actually led to the Moakley Center coming to this campus. I felt like a member of a family. I really did. And Gail, I met Gail when I was a student. It felt like a family, and we really work hard to keep that same family feel to this place. And to do that, you really have to have that kind of faculty to student engagement where you can get to meet your professor and your professor will take an interest in you and make a difference in your life. You know, like many of our students, I came from a family that didn't have any college experience at all. I wanted to be a lawyer. I wanted to work in government, in politics. No one in my family, extended family, no one had any experience along those lines. So I turned to my advisor, Guy Clifford, and I turned to my friends in the department that took an interest in me, people like Mike Krasanik, and they shaped me. They molded me. They nudged me to a different course of my life. And here I am. They wouldn't have imagined it, I don't think, but it's that nudging that makes the difference. Our political science department, I get concerned when they stand in the shadows because that just tells me that there's a conspiracy in the making, especially with Shaheen Mosafar, you know, who's walking away because I caught him in the act probably. But, you know, we've been honoring our faculty for the last couple of weeks, Faculty Appreciation Week, you know, and I think it's so perfect to honor Dr. Guy Clifford in this way because we're not honoring a name. We'll unveil some information, but it's more than a memory. It really is an example of great teaching and learning, what we value. It's a statement of what we value at Bridgewater State. And the department, the political science department, still to this day, built on the foundation that we all talked about, still teaches in that same way, still making that difference. I see it every single day on this campus. We'll see it tonight. We'll see it again on Saturday, that nudging, you know, so that our students can make the most of themselves and their opportunities. I also have to thank Brian Frederick. Brian came to my office with this idea, and I thought, for all the reasons I've just described, this is the right thing to do. This is the right thing to do for the reasons that I've already described. So it wasn't me, and I appreciate you singling me out, but really it was our board of trustees, Gene Durgan, and also our foundation board, and Tom Caron, our chairman in the back there, because they realized, as we did, that we want to have this example. It's the right thing to do when it comes to foundation property. We had a little bit more flexibility along those lines. I also want to say that when I think of Guy Clifford, it's hard to talk about the giants in your life, the mentors in your life, the people that made you who you are. And I saw him at the Windy Ridge at 11 o'clock. I saw him actually at Friendly's, and it had already closed, you know, the Friendly's when it was down on 18. And, you know, and I think that when I saw him grading papers with a red pen, coffee, cigarettes, when you could actually smoke a cigarette in a restaurant, I thought that's just what we should expect from our professors, to give that extra measure of devotion to their students, that extra mile of caring. And so I would stop in at the Windy Ridge, and I think he was just grading papers. He was probably just behind. I don't think there was probably any sinister motivation. But I do remember one night, and it was about 11:30 at night, and I know Friendly's had closed, and I was helping a gentleman running for state representative. He was from my town, Easton, but he was originally from South Boston. So there was a South Boston influence, and I was his campaign manager. I was very, very proud. And this gentleman's name was Jim Cook. Jim Cook's friend got this old clunker of a car, painted it, Jim Cook for state representative all around, put a speaker on the top of it that you would, with a microphone, go up and down the neighborhoods. And I thought that was the greatest thing in the world. So I was at Friendly's, and I saw Dr. Clifford, and I asked him to come out and check out this car. So he checked out the car, and we took a little spin around the neighborhood, and he said to me, and I can't possibly use his inflection for his speech, but he said, hey Fred, how do you think this speaker is going to go over in the suburban leafy town of Easton? And I thought, uh-oh, this campaign's in trouble, and it was. But I just want to say, as we kind of close out today, we mentioned internships, and the scholarship, I think, has been very important. It's helped so many of our students. But we're going to talk about internships as well. And I want to say, Guy was my advisor, and my career in government was launched with an internship at his direction with Congressman Joe Moakley. And we want to focus on internships, particularly paid internships for our students. And that's one of the byproducts of the conversations that we've had. We will have an opportunity to provide some support for our political science students that really need to overcome that financial barrier to get to where they want to go, whether it's an internship, a career, or in life, to get to where they need to go. And I think in addition to the House, we're also starting a movement when it comes to internships and other opportunities for our students. So I want to thank all of you, the family, for helping us to launch that initiative as well. It will make a difference. It's a pebble in a pond, and the pebble landed for me, and it continues to ripple, and the pebble will land for so many of our students and will continue to ripple for many, many years to come. Thank you so much. I look forward to the unveiling.
So now I'd like to invite members of the Clifford family, Guy's sons, Gail, grandchildren up, along with President Clark, Chairman Durgan, and members of the Political Science Department. Come on, no more in the shadows. Chairman Karen, too. Okay. Chairman Karen as well. All guys to the back.